All right, diving into residential real estate today. Looks like we've got a really interesting mix of stuff to cover. Market trends, financing, even some legal stuff, and new tech.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty comprehensive.
We'll make sure you come out of this deep dive with a solid understanding, whether you're a first-time buyer, thinking about becoming a landlord, or just want to wrap your head around this massive market.
Exactly. It's a good goal. And it's funny, a lot of people, when they hear residential real estate, they just think single-family homes.
Yeah, just that classic house with the white picket fence. Right?
Exactly. But the reality is the market's a lot more diverse than that. There are options for pretty much every lifestyle, budget, you name it.
Okay, so let's talk about that variety. Our sources mention everything from condos and townhouses to multifamily homes, luxury properties, even vacation homes. A lot to unpack there. What are some of the biggest things someone should be thinking about when they're trying to figure out what type of property is right for them?
Well, it's kind of like finding the right puzzle piece, isn't it? It has to fit your life. Like take condos, for example. Those can be a perfect fit for someone like a young professional.
Yeah.
Or anyone who just wants a low-maintenance lifestyle.
Yeah.
You often get those amenities with condos, the fitness centers, the pools. But then on the flip side, you've got those HOA fees and all those rules.
Yeah, the HOA. Gotta love them.
Right. It's a bit of a trade-off. You're giving up a bit of independence, maybe, but gaining a ton of convenience.
True. That condo life might be perfect for someone who's always on the go and doesn't want to spend their weekends mowing the lawn. But then you have things like townhouses, right? Those seem to offer a little more space and privacy, but they're still often in those walkable, more urban locations.
Yeah. Townhouses can be a really good compromise, I think, for people who like the feel of a house but don't want the responsibility of a huge yard.
All that yard work, right.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have the classic single-family home, max privacy, lots of space, but, well, get those responsibilities too, more maintenance, higher property taxes, that sort of thing.
I can totally picture that. A family with young kids who need that backyard to run around in, or, someone who just loves gardening and wants that big outdoor space. It's definitely a different vibe than condo living, that's for sure. But, okay, let's back up for a second. Before anyone can even start thinking about paint colors, we need to talk about the different ways you can actually own a property.
Oh, good point. It's not always as straightforward as people might think. We really need to understand that distinction between freehold and leasehold ownership.
Yeah, could you break that down for us? I think that's a concept that can be a little fuzzy for folks.
Sure. So freehold, that means you own the building and the land it's sitting on, gives you total control. But then you have leasehold, where you own the building, but you're actually leasing the land for a certain amount of time. Usually it's a pretty long lease, decades even. But it's still a lease.
So that's like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy. It's like the difference between buying a car and leasing it, maybe. But how does leasehold ownership, how does that actually impact things like the value of the property and what you can do with it?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, with leasehold, the value of your property, it can be affected by how much time is left on the lease. As that lease gets closer to expiring, the value might go down because anyone buying it's basically inheriting that shrinking ownership window.
Yeah, so it's not just about the building itself, it's about how much time you've got left on that land lease. That makes a lot of sense. But okay, let's be real. Most people aren't buying properties outright cash in hand. Mortgages are a huge part of this whole equation, right?
Oh, absolutely. For most people, a mortgage is going to be the way to finance a home purchase. Those loans are usually spread out over like 15 to 30 years. And the interest rates and terms you qualify for, those are going to have a big impact on your monthly payments and whether you can actually afford the place. And don't forget your credit score. That plays a huge role in all of this.
It's like this whole other layer of complexity on top of everything else. But yeah, understanding it is so important. Now, the stuff you sent over mentions different types of mortgages, like FHA loans and VA loans. Can you tell us a little bit about those? What makes them different?
Sure. So FHA loans, those are backed by the Federal Housing Administration. And they're really designed to help first-time buyers or people who maybe don't have the best credit scores get into homes. The requirements are a bit more lenient. VA loans, those are specifically for veterans, and they offer really competitive interest rates and terms.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all mortgage world. That's good to know. There are options depending on your situation, who you are, all of that. But even if you've got your mortgage all figured out, the real estate market itself can feel like a roller coaster sometimes, right? What are some of the things that drive those ups and downs, those crazy swings we hear about?
You're not wrong. It's definitely always in flux. And understanding what's driving those changes is super important. One of the most basic things is just supply and demand, you know. When you've got more buyers out there than homes for sale, prices go up. That's what we call a seller's market. But then, if there are more homes for sale than people who want to buy them, well, prices might drop, and that's a buyer's market.
Okay, that makes sense. It's economics 101, right? But with houses. What are some of the things that influence whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market in the first place? It can't be random, can it?
You're catching on fast. There are a bunch of factors at play, like interest rates, how many people are employed, even just general consumer confidence. For example, let's say interest rates are low, which means borrowing money is cheaper. Well, that might encourage more people to jump into the market and try to buy a place, and that can push prices up.
So it's like this chain reaction. One thing leads to another, and boom, you've got a hot market where houses are getting snatched up left and right. But then what if the economy takes a dip? It starts heading south a little. Do those low interest rates even matter then?
Yeah, that's a good point. Things can definitely change when the economy takes a downturn. People start to worry about their jobs, and maybe they don't want to make a big financial commitment, like buying a house, even if the interest rates look good. It really comes down to how confident everyone feels about the future.
It's like there's this whole psychological side to it too, on top of all those financial realities. So yeah, even if those low interest rates are out there, a shaky economy can kind of put a damper on things. But beyond the big economic picture, are there, some more local things that can affect property values? I know location is like the real estate mantra, but what does that actually mean?
Oh, you're absolutely right. Location's about way more than just the address. It's about the neighborhood itself. Its personality, what it has to offer, things like being close to good schools, parks, public transportation, even just like shops and restaurants. All of that can make a big difference in how desirable a property is. It's like you're buying into a whole lifestyle package along with the house.
So it's not just about what's inside the house, it's what's outside those four walls too. Now, some of the sources you sent over talk about investment opportunities in residential real estate, and I think a lot of people just assume that means becoming a landlord. But are there other ways to invest in this market?
Oh, for sure. There are actually a bunch of different ways to invest in real estate. It's not all about being a landlord. Like, remember we talked about house flipping earlier. That's where you buy a property that's maybe a little undervalued, fix it up, and then sell it for a profit.
Yeah, that sounds kind of exciting, but also it could be risky. What are some of the things someone should be thinking about before they, jump headfirst into that whole house flipping thing?
Well, house flipping's definitely not for everyone. You need to be able to handle a little stress. You really need a good eye for spotting properties that have potential, and you need to understand renovation costs. And you got to be good at managing projects, dealing with contractors, that kind of thing. Because there's always the risk that something unexpected will pop up during the renovations, and that can eat into your profits pretty quickly.
So you need a good dose of optimism, a whole lot of patience, and maybe some luck along the way. But okay, what about someone who isn't as comfortable with risk? Or maybe they just don't want to deal with all those hands-on renovations. Are there other investment options out there that might be a better fit?
Yeah, definitely. That's where things like real estate investment trusts or REITs come in. A REIT is basically a company that owns and manages properties, the kind that generate income, like apartment buildings or shopping centers. And you can invest in a REIT just by buying shares of the company.
Oh, interesting. So instead of buying an actual property yourself, you're buying into a company that owns a whole bunch of properties. What are the pluses and minuses of going the REIT route?
Well, REITs can be a good way to add some diversity to your investments. Get a little piece of the real estate market without having to actually own any property yourself. And they tend to be more liquid than physical property, which means you can sell your shares more easily if you need to.
So it's a more hands-off approach, which I bet appeals to a lot of people. But of course, every investment comes with risks, right? What are some of the things to watch out for with REITs?
Yeah, just like with any investment, REITs can be affected by what's happening in the market and the economy as a whole. Their value can go up and down, and there's never a guarantee you'll make money. It's important to do your research, look into different REITs, and really understand what their investment strategy is, what kind of properties they own, all of that.
So don't just blindly invest in the first REIT you see. Makes sense. But okay, whether you're buying a home to actually live in or you're thinking of it as an investment, there's this whole legal side of real estate that can be pretty intimidating, right? Our sources mention zoning laws, property taxes, homeowner association rules. Where do we even start with all of that?
Yeah, no, it's true. The legal stuff can definitely be overwhelming. Let's start with zoning laws. Basically, these laws determine how land can be used in a particular area. They'll tell you if a property is zoned for residential use, commercial use, or maybe a mix of both.
So zoning laws are basically the rules about what you can and can't do with a property. Like, I couldn't just buy a house in a residential neighborhood and decide to open up a restaurant there.
Exactly. Zoning laws are there to keep things organized and make sure different land uses can all exist together without causing problems. They also affect things like how tall buildings can be, how far they have to be set back from the property lines, even what kinds of businesses are allowed in certain areas.
So it's about maintaining the character of the neighborhood, right? Making sure things don't get too crazy. That makes sense. Okay, what about property taxes? Those are like the one bill we can never escape, right?
Sadly, yes. Property taxes are based on how much your property is worth and what the local tax rate is. They pay for things like schools, roads, fire departments, all the essential services.
Yeah.
But yeah, they can be a big expense, so it's super important to factor that into your budget when you're thinking about buying.
Right. It's not just about the mortgage, it's those ongoing costs too. And then there are those mysterious HOA rules, the ones everyone seems to whisper about. What are those all about?
HOAs, those are homeowner associations. They're pretty common in places like planned communities and condo complexes. And their rules, they can cover all kinds of things, from how you're allowed to landscape your yard to noise restrictions. Some HOAs even have rules about what color you can paint your front door.
Seriously? You might not even get to choose your own paint color. That's wild. What's the thinking behind all those, sometimes pretty strict HOA rules?
Well, the goal is usually to maintain the look of the community and keep property values up. They want to create a sense of uniformity, prevent things from getting too messy or random looking. But as you can imagine, sometimes those HOA rules can be a little controversial, and they can lead to some disagreements between homeowners and the association.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like trying to balance individual freedom with keeping the community looking good. Definitely adds another layer of complexity to homeownership. But okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the actual features of a property. When you're looking at houses, what are some of the key things you should be paying attention to?
Of course. Well, you've got your basics, like how many bedrooms and bathrooms there are. But beyond that, it's really important to think about the layout and the flow of the space. Does it work for the way you live? Is there enough natural light? Does the kitchen have enough counter space? Those are all important things to consider.
Right. It's not just checking boxes on a list. It's about how the space makes you feel. What about outdoor areas? It seems like those are becoming more and more important to people these days.
Oh, totally. Having a private backyard, a patio, even just a balcony can make a huge difference in how much you enjoy your home. Outdoor spaces give you that connection to nature. It's a place to relax, to entertain, and they can actually add value to your property too.
Yeah, it's like outdoor space has become this whole other living area, not just an afterthought. Now, some of these sources you sent over mentioned vacation homes, and I've got to say, that always gets my attention. There's just something about having that place you can escape to, right? Whether it's a beach house or a cabin in the mountains, but is owning a vacation home just a fantasy for most people? Or is it becoming more realistic these days?
I actually think it is becoming more doable for a lot of people, especially with so many people working remotely now. It's like, if you can work from anywhere, why not work from someplace amazing?
Makes sense. Trade that home office for an ocean view. But how are people making it work financially? I mean, vacation homes aren't exactly known for being budget-friendly.
Well, you're right. The costs can be pretty high, but there's some creative ways people are making it happen. Like, have you heard of fractional ownership? It's becoming more and more popular.
I've heard of it, but I don't really know how it works.
So basically, you share ownership of the property with a few other people. You each buy a share of the home, and then you get to use it for a certain amount of time each year.
So it's kind of like a timeshare, but you actually own a piece of the property. That's interesting. What are some other ways people are doing this?
Well, renting out the property when you're not using it is a popular strategy. Helps offset the costs, maybe even generates a little income. And sites like Airbnb have made it so easy to find renters.
Oh yeah, turning your vacation home into a side hustle. Smart. But even with those strategies, I'm guessing there are still a lot of financial and logistical things to think about before you, take the plunge and buy a vacation home.
Oh, for sure. It's not a decision to make lightly. Just like with a regular home, you've got property taxes, insurance, maintenance, maybe even HOA fees.
Right. Those ongoing costs don't just go away because it's a vacation home. And I bet location is even more important with the second property, right? I mean, you want to make sure it's a place you'll actually enjoy going back to year after year.
You got it. Picking the right location is key. It's not just about the property itself, it's about what's around it. The things you can do, the overall vibe of the place. Do you want to be on the beach, in the mountains, tucked away in the woods somewhere? What kind of activities do you see yourself doing?
It's like choosing the setting for your ideal getaway. Now, some people look at vacation homes as investments, not just a place to relax. Is that a smart move? Or is it more of a risky thing to do?
Vacation homes can definitely be good investments, but just like with anything else, there are risks involved. Properties in those really popular vacation spots, especially the ones that are in high demand for rentals, those tend to go up in value over time. So yeah, it could be a way to build some wealth.
So it's not just about having that escape, it could actually make you some money down the road. But I bet the location is even more crucial when you're thinking of a vacation home as an investment.
Right. Absolutely. You want to look for places that have a history of strong tourism, maybe a growing economy, and not a lot of new development going on. That'll help drive demand and keep those property values going up.
Sounds like finding the right spot for a vacation home investment takes some serious homework. Well, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier, about how important it is to stay informed about all of this.
Oh yeah, for sure. Whether you're a real estate pro or just starting out, knowledge is power, right? The market's always changing, new trends popping up, and those rules and regulations, those can change too.
It's like trying to solve this constantly shifting puzzle. So how can people, how can they stay ahead of the curve in this crazy real estate world?
Oh, there are so many resources out there. Read some industry publications, maybe attend a webinar or two, talk to some experienced people, real estate agents, mortgage brokers, that sort of thing. And hey, even listening to podcasts like this one can help you keep up with what's happening.
Right. It's all about being proactive, educating yourself, and staying curious. The more you know, the better decisions you'll make, whether you're buying, selling, investing, whatever your real estate goals are. Well, I think that about covers it for our deep dive into residential real estate. Hopefully it's been helpful, maybe even given you some ideas for your own real estate journey.
Yeah, definitely. And remember, there are so many possibilities in real estate, from finding the perfect place to call home to building a solid investment portfolio. Just be curious, keep learning, and don't be afraid to take a few chances.
Happy house hunting, everyone!